Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So this week's Parasha is Vayelech. Tell us what it means, please, Tom. Did I get the pronunciation okay there for you?
It's Vayelech.
I thought it was that.
Yeah, Vayelech. And just for anyone who's listening, Joe could easily do this himself. He knows the Hebrew, he loves the Hebrew, but he knows I love it too. So he gives me the opportunity to do this part, because he acts selflessly, Joseph does. So thank you for that. Vayelech, as always, it's one of the first words in the Torah portion, and this is the actual first word, and it can mean, it's in the third person, so it can mean he went, she went, or it went. And because the following word is Moses, it means and he went. Just if you think of the previous two Torah portions, one was kitete and one was kitavo, and one's when you go out and one's when you come in. And it's a bit like English really, because there are many words that can have different meanings. You know, the same word can have different meanings. You think, well, why is there so many words just to mean go? Well, it's the same in English, because I could say something like Johnny had his supper and then he went and did his homework. Well, he didn't go away anywhere, and it just means he proceeded to. So it's from the root word halach, and that verb means to proceed, to go, to walk, to depart. It can even mean to flow or even to float. But in general, it means to go or to walk. And so, with it being in the third person and in the past, it means and he went. Just to add to that, I don't think it's an accident. Well, and I know it's not an accident actually, because this is God's word we're dealing with. And when Ezra the scribe decided, look, we're going to have to do something here, and he initiated the Torah portions to be done on an annual cycle, it's no accident that this Torah portion is translated as and he went, and that's Vayelech.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Beautiful. Before we start the Parasha, we remind ourselves what we do in this fellowship and why we do it, most importantly. And we read the creed of what the Almond House is all about. And this always kicks off our Parasha. And we start in Mark 12 and it's verse 29. And just to give you some background on what's happening at this event, Yehoshua he's pressed by the Pharisees, and they ask him what the greatest commandment is in the Torah, because we in this room, we're all about the commandments and we're all about the Torah. And they say to him, tell us then, Yehoshua, what is the greatest commandment of all of the Torah? And what does Yehoshua do? Yehoshua quotes the Shema. He says, Shema im Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And it translates, hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord our God is one. V'yachavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'v'kol levavcha, v'v'kol nafsheka, v'v'kol mechodecha. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, and with all your soul. By these two great commandments hang the entire law and the prophets. Yehoshua then insists in telling them the second like unto it. Though he was not asked, he puts the two together because they go hand in hand. He says, and you shall love your neighbour as you love yourself. V'yechavta l'recha v'yechavta chamocha. Amen.
Amen.
And this love is so well described by Paul in 1 Corinthians 13. And we don't want to read this mechanically. And each week we want to check ourselves. We want the words to reflect, to witness to us, to be a mirror to where we do fall short, so that we can be picked back up by our Mashiach, who is the source of all love, who taught an everlasting love that did not fail. And we want to be moulded and manufactured into the image of Christ and walk as he walked. And this love is so well detailed by Paul. Love is patient and love is kind. Love does not envy and love does not boast. Love is not puffed up and love does not behave indecently. Love does not seek its own and love is not provoked. Love reckons not to do any evil and does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but love rejoices in the truth. Love covers all, it believes all, expects all and endures all, and love never fails. And in John 13:34, Yeshua says, I give you a renewed commandment, to love each other as I have loved you. And this is the very foundation of what we're trying to achieve. And we must look at ourselves, because many people can say, well, I'm eating kosher and I've got the tzitzis on, but as Paul says, if you're doing all these things and you don't have love, then you have not profited whatsoever. Love is the greatest of them all. And in John 14, Yeshua says, if you love me, in return, you will keep my commandments. This is relationship. This isn't religion. This is relationship. We're in relationship with the King of the universe. And it's founded in love. And that was his doctrine, based upon love. So we'll turn to Deuteronomy 31 now. And we'll get into the Parasha. Just one chapter this week. And it is actually the smallest Parasha. I said last week that we were in one of the most smallest Parashas, but this week is actually the smallest. It's a single chapter, Vayelech. So what happens in a nutshell in this week's Parasha? Vayelech happens to be the smallest Parasha in the entire series. This single chapter recounts the last moments of Moses' life. It begins with Moses continuing on in his speech towards the nation of Israel. He proclaims to the people that this day he is 120 years old, and now the time had come for him to pass the mantle of his leadership and authority to Joshua, his successor. Moses then entrusts the Levites with the Torah's safekeeping and the Ark of the Covenant, and the mitzvah of hakhel is given to the people, and this translates in Hebrew to gather, to conduct a gathering or an assembly. And this is what we do today. And we see this actually appearing in the Parasha. Every 7th Sukkot, at the year of release, the people were called to gather together to hear the words of the Torah be read aloud. And we are doing something very similar, and it's got such a messianic shadow, and we're going to focus on that today. The hakhel is where people would gather themselves as one accord on the holy site of Jerusalem, and the king or the leader of Israel would read from the Torah. The hakhel gathering during the time of Sukkot has a huge messianic shadow of what is to come, giving a glimpse of the future reign of Messiah, when the Torah will go forth from Mount Zion and the nations will gather to go and hear the king talk at Mount Zion. Vayelech concludes with the prediction that the people will, though, turn away from the covenant with God, causing him to hide his face, but also with the promise that the words of the Torah shall not be forgotten at the mouths of their descendants, giving a glimpse of a certain future redemption that awaits them. And it's just right on the cusp at the end of the chapter in verse 30, before we go into the Song of Moses, that Moses says, because of these reasons, I am going to give you a song so that you remember, so that you sing it in your heart, to recall your identity. And it's a means of remembering who we are. And that ties in so closely with Revelations, because we see at the end, the one accord, the people that come out the tribulation, sing the Song of Moses. So it's a beautiful Parasha. So we will read Deuteronomy 31, and then we'll get into it. We're actually going to come across probably one of my favourite verses in the entirety of Scripture. It's powerful. It's a powerful verse. So I'll leave that with you, so you can have a little think of what it might be. But me coming from the background that I was in, and always being faced with things, being a constant threat, and always thinking about what's this person going to be like, or what's that going to be like, and then taking, what I'd learned into this walk, but then applying the same sort of mentality to this walk, but understanding that we were at war, but in a spiritual war. I'm no longer dealing with weapons made with man's hands, but rather spiritual weapons. And as we've spoken of anxiety and fear, I mean, the world is designed, this Babylonian matrix is designed to program you with fear every moment of your living day. They just want to pump you full of fear. But this week the Lord tells us, in fact, He commands us not to fear. It's a commandment. It's a commandment not to fear. We can say we've got these commandments going on and we're doing it, and we're not eating, we're not eating the pig, and we've got the ZTs on. Well, hang on a minute. Are you fearing a situation that you feel you've got no control over? Well, the Lord commands us to fear not, to be courageous and bold, to walk upright, because He is with us. It's actually a commandment. It's in there. He's commanding His people to do that. And we all have an issue with fear. I read a quote that said, fear is false emotion appearing real, and that's so true to believers. We don't fear God, but the fear of God is so different, because that's awe, respect and infatuation of what He can do and who He is. It's not like He's going to drop bombs on you. It's not that type of fear like that. It's a totally different fear. And this fear that we deal with in the world, it attaches itself to us, doesn't it? It does. It really does. And it's a substance that's so hard to get off, and it's almost like a poison to your faith. The only antidote then is the Word of God, because the Word of God tells us to fear not, but to be courageous, to be of good strength, because He goes before us. Amen. And He is with us. So we're going to investigate these things today. I think we'll start. I don't know where Betsy's at, so we'll start. We'll read chapter 31 and then we'll break it down. So when you're ready, please, Mark.
Okay. And Moshe went and spoke these words to all Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I am no longer able to go out and come in. And Yehoshua has said to me, you do not pass over the Jordan. Yehoshua your Elohim Himself is passing over before you. He shall destroy these nations from before you, and you possess them. Yehoshua Himself is passing over before you, as Yehoshua has spoken. And Yehoshua shall do to them as He did to Sihon and to Og, the sovereigns of the Amorites and their land, when He destroyed them. And Yehoshua shall give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to all the command which I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous, do not fear nor be afraid of them. For it is Yehoshua your Elohim who is going with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. And Moshe called Yehoshua and said to him before the eyes of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yehoshua has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you are to let them inherit it. And it is Yehoshua who is going before you. He Himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. And Moshe wrote this Torah and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yehoshua, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of Sukkot, when all Israel comes to appear before Yehoshua your Elohim in the place which He chooses, read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women and the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear, and so that they learn to fear Yehoshua your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah. And their children, who have not known it, should hear and learn to fear Yehoshua your Elohim as long as you live in the land you are passing over the Jordan to possess. And Yehoshua said to Moshe, see, the days have drawn near for you to die. Call Yehoshua and present yourselves in the tent of appointment, so that I command him. And Moshe and Yehoshua went and presented themselves in the tent of appointment. And Yehovah appeared at the tent in a column of cloud, and the column of cloud stood before the door of the tent. And Yehovah said to Moshe, See, you are about to sleep with your fathers, and this people shall arise and whore after the mighty ones of the strangers of the land, into the midst of which they shall enter, and forsake me, and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my displeasure shall burn against them in that day, and I shall forsake them, and hide my face from them, and they shall be consumed. And many evils and distresses shall come upon them, and it shall be said in that day, Is it not because our Elohim is not in our midst that these evils have come upon us? And I shall certainly hide my face in that day, because of all the evil which they have done. For they shall turn to other mighty ones. And now write down this song for yourselves, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, so that this song is to me for a witness against the children of Israel. And I shall bring them to the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers. And they shall eat and be satisfied and be fat. Then they shall turn to other mighty ones, and they shall serve them and scorn me and break my covenant. And it shall be, when many evils and distresses come upon them, that this song shall answer before them as a witness. For it is not to be forgotten in the mouths of their seed, for I know their thoughts which they are forming today, even before I bring them to the land of which I swore to give them. And Moshe wrote this song the same day, and taught it to the children of Israel. And he commanded Yehoshua son of Nun, and said, Be strong and courageous, for you are to bring the children of Israel into the land of which I swore to them, and I myself am with you. And it came to be, when Moshe had completed writing the words of this Torah in a book under their completion, that Moshe commanded the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant of Yehovah, saying, Take this book of the Torah, and you shall place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yehovah your Elohim, and it shall be there as a witness against you. For I myself know your rebellion and your stiff neck. See, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yehovah, then how much more after my death? Assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil shall come to you in the latter days, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yehovah, to provoke him through the work of your hands. So Moshe spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel the words of this song till their completion. Selah.
Hallelujah. Selah. Selah. And that's it. That's our Parasha. Let's break it down. Let's unpack it. Let's go line by line, precept by precept. So Deuteronomy 31, we're going to start at verse 3. Straight to my favourite one. It's a powerful verse. It says, Yahweh your God himself is passing over before you. He shall destroy these nations from before you and possess them. Yehoshua himself is passing over before you, as Yahweh has spoken. We see the word, the Lord, and we see an image of Mashiach passing over. It's that text. It's the Passover. It's the blood of the Lamb. It's the Almighty who goes before you. Yehoshua being a picture of Yeshua. And verse 3 has to be one of my favourite statements in Scripture. Truly it is. And I've got such a passion for it, and I want to share it all with you today. And if you've got a pen, please, I know people don't like writing in the Bibles, but highlight this verse. Highlight verse 3. Do not let this verse leave the forefronts of your eyes. We're going to meditate, we're going to unpack this, and we're going to drill it, because this is a weapon. This verse is a spiritual weapon that we can say, we can pray. It's a prayer we can have before we go into an event. It's anything at any time when we are faced with any type of anxiety or fear, to know that the Lord our God has gone in before us, and Yeshua is the one who's passed over before us. We have great security in it. So let's unpack it. This verse can truly summarize the centerpiece of our faith in a fallen world. This verse can strengthen us when we are weak. And this verse can lead you when you are lost. Have you ever felt outnumbered, outclassed, outwitted? Have you ever felt weak or been made to feel small? How about going into a situation unknowingly, not sure what the outcome was going to be, or dealt with a situation with a person or group of people where you've never known what the outcome would be? We've all been there. We all have. But we must remind ourselves of this very verse. And once we've studied this verse out, we will all be familiar to add it to a string in our bow in the arsenal of this spiritual battle. So let's unpack this verse and let's see it from an Israelite perspective. So a bit of history. Moses has now just begun to pronounce his fate. He's telling the nation of Israel that he'd been with for 40 years, that he's not going to go into the land, that he's actually going to die in the wilderness. I mean, these people must have been quite devastated at that time, and we see how they wept for him. And this is a man who brought the people out of Egypt, and this is a man who parted the Red Sea and who brought water forth from a rock, and he led them through the wilderness. And now he's proclaiming to the nation that he's ultimately going to die. They must have been devastated. But before Moses says anything else, before he gives any recognition to Yehoshua, what does he do? He conjures the Lord's name. He says, Yehovah is going before you. And what he's saying is, I'm just a man, and I'm of the flesh, and I'm going to die. But the King of the universe is already in the land. He has already gone before you. Israel would have been stunned. Their once admired leader, king, prophet, and priest of Israel, the one who stood up before Pharaoh, was now saying he was going to leave this life. And they would have to go in and take possession of a new life. But what would they do? But he reminds them that their God has actually gone before them. And it is their God that secures the victory, and not him, for he is just a man. And I just think that's quite beautiful. Yehovah is the one that is going into the land to defeat the giants. He is the one that is going to lift up the sword. He is the one that has planned the divine skirmish of conquest on the giants. He is the one who will not let their foot dash against the stone. He is the one who will protect you and not let you perish. The battle belongs to the Lord. And I used to hear Christians saying that and go, oh, what? The battle belongs to the Lord. Haven't you been on the streets of Birkenhead? But now I know what it means. The battle truly, truly does belong to the Lord. He is ahead of time. He is beyond time. He's not measured by space or time. He has already predetermined the destiny, and he is already involved in the outcome. So when Moses says in verse 3, Yehovah, the Yud He Vav He, who was, who is, and is still to come, the past, present, and future, he himself is passing over before you, and he himself shall destroy these nations, and you shall possess them. What more security would they need? All they needed to do was go in faith, because the battle belongs to the Lord. This is a very important precept that we must keep at the forefront of our mind, and let it be in the meditation of our prayers when we are in desperate need of the presence of God in our lives, when fear is trying to cling itself to you, that sticky substance that drowns out our faith. This is the antidote. Deuteronomy 31 verse 3, Yehovah has gone before you, and Yehovah will strike down the nations and cause them to be possessed. He goes ahead of us. He is beyond space-time. He has written out the end and the beginning. For those that confess to know him and love him, he becomes your king. He's the warrior God. He will fight for you. He gives his life for you. What more security do we need? As I said before, fear is the universal reality of this Babylonian matrix. Everyone is fearful. I'm fearful of my job. I'm fearful of my boss. I'm fearful of this, and I'm fearful of what they're going to say. And everything is programmed into us to cause us to fear. And it's a false emotion appearing real for them who are believers. For them who are believers. Because for them who are believers, We already know our destiny. We've already got the book of Revelations where it says there will be no more tears. He will wipe away everything from our eyes. We will go into a place with no more sorrow, to just have faith, to cling to him, to know him, because the victory is already his. Though we may be living in this Babylonian matrix, though the devil, Hasatan, may try and quench your faith with fear, our Father instructs us to fear not, to not be afraid, and instead he commands to be strong and to be courageous, and in some translations it will be bold. If we keep the Lord in the centre of our life, everything else is held together. That's the truth. When we look at the Israelites, and we've studied in Numbers the nation and the formation, we know that they made the shape of the cross as they wandered through the wilderness. We're all aware of that. We studied Numbers. The ark was kept in the centre. So as the Israelites were going through the wilderness, the ark was always kept in the centre. The ark was kept in the centre, and any time there was a battle, what happened? The ark would go straight ahead. The ark would cease being in the middle and it would go straight ahead. The ark was the first thing in. The ark went before the people. The priests in the ark went in, and the people then went in after it. The Lord goes before us in all circumstance. Joshua 3 verse 5 through to 6 says this. Joshua said to the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you." And he said to the priests, "Take the Ark of the Covenant and go ahead of the people." So the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant and they went ahead of the people. The Ark of the Covenant goes ahead of you. If we keep the Lord in the centre of our walk, we as a people need to keep him right in the centre. For when trouble comes, for when threat comes, he's already gone ahead of you. He's already gone ahead of you. It's a beautiful image. The ark would keep all the tribes locked in. They would be flying their banners representing the 4 living creatures that surround the throne room. And any time there was a threat, it was the Lord that went forth first. Let's go to Numbers 10 verse 33. I want you to see this because this is powerful. We have to understand that whenever there was trouble or a threat of war, the ark was always the first one in. So whenever you feel a threat, if you keep the Lord at the centre of your life, he's already gone before you. We must remember that the Ark of the Covenant is symbolic of the heart. The Lord wants to write the commandments where? On our heart. So the heart of the Lord went before the people during any threat. That's his heart for all of us. He'll put his heart on the line. He goes before you. He gave his life for you. Numbers 10 verse 33 says this. So they set out from the mountain of the Lord and they travelled for 3 days. The Ark of the Covenant went before them during those 3 days to find a place of rest. Wow! Wrap your head around that. The Ark of the Covenant went 3 days ahead of the people to find rest. What's that telling you? That's telling you that you didn't pick to come here today to cease from your work and rest. The Lord came before you and brought you here a long time ago, before the foundation of the world. Anytime we see 3, what do we think of? The sign of the prophet Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights. So what's this verse telling me? This verse is saying to me that the Lord has gone ahead of us in his resurrection to give us eternal rest. It says, Numbers 10:33, that the Ark of the Covenant travelled 3 days to find the people rest. That's telling me that Yehoshua HaMashiach rose on the 3rd day and went before us into the heavens to prepare a place to give us eternal rest. Amen. Eternal rest. The Lord's presence is always ahead of you. The Lord has gone before you. Yehoshua HaMashiach has gone before us. Isaiah 52 verse 12 says this. For you shall not go with haste, nor by flight, For the Lord your God will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. The God of Israel will go before you, and he will be your rear guard. Wow. What's that telling us? It's telling us he's already in the future, and he's already in the past. If he's our rear guard, he's already standing in the place that we've just left. He's blotting out our transgressions of our previous life. He's forgetting our iniquity from Egypt, and he's already ahead of time. He is past, he is present, and he is future. Verse 12, he will go before you, and he will be your rear guard. He has his hand on the end result. He has already written the victory, and he isn't measured by space or time. The scripture in Isaiah then speaks volumes, and should do, to all of us as believers. He is standing in the place that you just left because he is outside of space and time. You don't need to look back at your past mistakes because he has already forgiven you. You don't need to worry about if he is with you now because he's always said he is in your midst. And you don't need to fret about what tomorrow will hold because he has already gone ahead of you. Amen. This is the God that we serve. We need to grasp this further. Let's go to Isaiah 42, verse 2. We are going to see now that the Lord is speaking to Cyrus, and he gives a bold statement that he is going to go before and beseech these cities, and he's going to make straight the crooked places, and he's going to break in pieces the gates of bronze and cut down the bars of iron. It's Isaiah 45 verse 2, please, Jonathan.
45.
Sorry, my bad, yeah. Isaiah 45 verse 2.
I will go before you and make crooked places straight. I will shatter bronze doors and cut through iron bars.
Hallelujah. He does make the rugged places smooth, and he will remove all obstacles in your life. The bars of iron that have imprisoned you into a state of fear, he cuts down. The gates of bronze, what did Yehoshua say? Not even the gates of Hades shall prevail. He smashes to pieces. This is the King that we serve. Let's go to Exodus 14 verse 19 to see this further, because we need to know what we're dealing with here. We need to know the God that we're truly worshipping. We need to reveal his character to the world. And this is how we will be secure in our faith when faced with Pharaoh or Egypt, Hasatan and his demons. So let's go Exodus 14 verse 19. Just a bit of background to what's going on here. The children of Israel have left Egypt now, and they're at the banks of the Red Sea, and all of a sudden they hear chariot wheels and horses and chants and screams, and they look behind them and there's a dust cloud like what you see on the Exodus movie, and chariots are coming and the horses are galloping, and the sound of the war drums are going, and the people say, why have you brought us here to die in the wilderness? And they lack in faith. And then something quite remarkable happens. The Lord has gone ahead of them and led them to this place, and they feel abandoned. They feel that they've been set up. They feel they've been stitched. But let's see what happens. Verse 19, please, Mark.
And the messenger of Elohim who went before the camp of Yisrael moved and went behind them. And the column of cloud went from before them and stood behind them.
Wow, so it went from before their faces, and the column of cloud then picks itself up and goes to be their rear guard. Verse 20 says, so that it came between the camps of Egypt and Israel. Wow. The cloud was there in the darkness, but it was lit up in the night. So all night long, neither camp went near one another. What is this telling us? That Egypt is in darkness and Israel is in light, and we are protected by his presence. So though you may be being pursued by Hasatan, though the history of your whole life may be coming to reclaim you as a slave, please remember that the Lord your God is your rear guard, and that he will shroud Satan in darkness, because you have the light of the world, Yeshua.
Amen.
We are Israel, and Egypt is our enemy, but Hasatan is in darkness, and we have been given the light of the world. Faith tells us that no matter what lies before us, God is already there. No matter what enemy resides in that place, it is already defeated. No matter what history seeks to make you history, because we've all been there, remember that He is past, present and future. That He is your rear guard, that He has gone before you, and that He is with you. And please remember that Joshua, He goes to lead you into the land. Beautiful. Let's look at verse 4, because we move into something quite amazing just off the back of verse 3. It says, and Yahweh shall do to them as He did to Sinon and Og, the sovereigns of the Amorites in their land. And these are giants, by the way. These are Nephilim beings, ginormous. They were grasshoppers in their sight. Remember, this is what we read. And He destroyed them. Verse 5 says, and Yahweh shall give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to the commandment which I have commanded you. Now the Torah reminds us that no matter how big of an obstacle it may be, no matter how life-threatening it may seem, the Almighty has given the situation over in your hands. And I think we need to start reminding ourselves more and more, because that's what Moses does. He recalls their previous history to remind them of the victory that the Lord has given you. Remember, you were once a slave in Egypt. Remember how the Lord healed your back. Remember how the Lord took you off depression tablets. Remember how the Lord freed you from the dark underworld and turned you into an Israelite. Remember how the Lord freed you from the occult and drugs. Remember what the Lord did. Remember what the Lord did. We must remember the giants He's defeated in our lives, because that's what Moses does all the time. He says, remember how Og was defeated and handed over to you. And this is how we are to edify ourselves. Remember what was going on with your bladder. Remember how He healed you. Remember what He did to you. Remember how He healed you with your mental health. We can remind ourselves of the giants that have been slain, how they were given over to us, and how the victory was His. I think it's something we should do, especially when we lack in faith, to remind ourselves. Look at verse 6. What does He say? He says, but instead be strong and be courageous. Do not fear, nor be afraid, for Yahweh your God, He is going with you. He's not only just ahead of you, He's going with you. He does not fail nor forsake you. He commands not to be afraid. He's going in before us, and He's profoundly committed to us, and He's by us every step of the way. So when we are in transition and on the verge of entering into a new thing, or faced with something where we just feel a little bit on the back foot, remind yourself of what the Lord's done. Remind yourself that you worship the Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, that you're dealing with the God outside of space and time, and have enough faith to be strong and be courageous. And know that He will not leave you nor forsake you. And why is that? He won't leave you, because that isn't His character. It's impossible for God to fail. He will not fail you, nor will He forsake you, because His heart, the Lord's heart, is not made with flesh. The Lord's heart is made and filled full of grace and mercy. He isn't like us. He's rich in love. He's slow to anger. He's abiding in all virtues. His heart is made of grace. That is His heart. He cannot fail you, and He never will forsake you, as the scriptures say. And I think just from verse 3, 4, 5 and 6, any situation you've got going on, if you can recall that, you will move mountains with your faith.
Amen.
If you can recall that and bring that to the forefront of your eyelids, and you put Satan behind you with the rebuke of Yeshua, nothing will get in your way. No giant will hurt you. You will not dash your foot against the stone. For whatever comes upon you has already been predetermined. Even when faced with death. Even when we are all faced with death, which we are all going to be faced with at some point in this life, we must know that Yeshua died before us, and he is there preparing a place for us, that he has passed over, that the victory is his.
Amen.
So even when we are faced with the common enemy of death, there is no death without thou sting, because he has given us eternal life.
Praise you.
Can I just share Isaiah 53?
Yeah.
I was reading this morning, and it says, "But he was wounded, crushed for our sins. He was beaten, that we might have peace. He was whipped, and we were healed."
Hallelujah. He took the punishment for us. Yes, that's good.
Deuteronomy 31:6. My Bible cross-references it to Hebrews 13:5. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me?
Praise you. It's beautiful. And I hope that I've shared that passion I have for these verses in Scripture. Wherever you're going, whatever you're faced with, let it be the first thing that comes out of your mouth in prayer. Father, I love you, go before me, I trust you, I obey, I know the victory is yours. I know you have the hand on this situation, and I believe in you with all my heart, strength and soul. And I know that Yeshua has finished work upon the cross, and I can be made eternal with you. So no matter what happens, I know what the actual outcome will be. I hope that we can use that in future. It's a prayer me, Martin and Tommy have been praying all week. Father, go before us on this job. Father, please go ahead of us. And we know he did, and we felt that he'd already gone in. And the crooked paths that you would deal with where things go wrong and your head starts falling off, he made it straight. He made it straight, he did. We shared testimony about it today. Well, I think maybe I got in the flesh a couple of times, but you know. He made straight our paths, and that's what he does. Beautiful. Let's look at verse 7. Deuteronomy 31 verse 7 says, Moses called Yehoshua and said to him before the eyes of the whole nation of Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yahweh has sworn to your fathers to give them, and you are to let them inherit it. This is beautiful. It's almost symmetrical to what he gives the nation. However, he gives a little bit of a different instruction to Joshua. Now, we know Moses is a picture of the Torah, don't we? And we know that Joshua is a picture of what? Yeshua. So in that regard, this verse, we could make a bit of a connection to how the Torah, being Moses, called Yehoshua, into his ministry, with the end result that he will eventually take the nation of Israel back to the promised land. Let's read it again. And Moses, the Torah, called Yehoshua and said to him before the whole nation, Be strong and be courageous, for you are going to take these people into the land. You are going to let them inherit it. The Torah almost called Yeshua into his ministry. As Yeshua must have been reading from the scroll, it would have given him strength and courage. Don't you know that Deuteronomy is the most quoted book by our Messiah? The Torah gave him strength and courage to be bold. He must have knew what was coming. It was calling from the pages, preordaining the message of salvation to the people of the world, mapping out the future kingdom to come when he himself will lead us back into the promised land, the conquering Lion of Judah. Imagine Yeshua and how he would have felt reading the Torah, and Moses is calling to him from off the page, telling him to be courageous and be of courage. He rebuked the devil with the Torah. That's what Yeshua did. Talk about strength and courage. No wonder the Torah strengthened him. No wonder the Torah strengthened him. And we as believers today can read this verse and relate it to us also. When Yeshua returns, when he returns, we return. When he returns, we return. In that sense, the Torah, Moses, can give us strength today. The Torah tells us to be of courage and boldness as we have surety that this will occur. It's the same message for us. When Moses is telling the nation to be of courage and to have strength, for the Lord goes before you to take you into the land, and Yehoshua goes with you so that you inherit the land. We too can be made courageous and be bold because of them words, because we have absolute surety that's going to happen. No one in this room believes that that's not a certain truth. We all believe, fundamentalists, we are all totally fixed on that as a certain truth. Well then, therefore, these words have given us strength, and they've given us boldness, and they've made us courageous, because this is what is going to happen. This is a done deal. Beautiful. So
Can I just say something? Sometimes it takes courage to do nothing.
Yeah, it does.
So being still and knowing that you are God. Sometimes there's an action and power in being still and standing firm on the promises of God given you. By doing that, there's power in that. By not actually acting or reacting to things. Sometimes things come at you, and you see it coming at you. You know it's coming your way, and it's just like a provocation for you to react.
Yeah.
But sometimes the power is in the stillness.
Praise
and allowing God to intervene.
It's very true, and we see that resembled in Messiah when he stood before Pilate and he was accused of atrocities, of things that carried the death penalty. And what did he do? He was still, he was quiet, he held his peace. Beautiful. We'll do one more and then we'll take a break for lunch. In fact, I think this is a good point to take a break. So with that, we will take a break. Let's get into this. So just as the 7th day Sabbath and the 7-year cycle of planting and harvesting has prophetic symbolism about the end times and the eternal rest with Yeshua, the 7 days of Sukkot that we celebrate also has symbolic meaning to do with his return, and it also points to the fulfillment of everlasting peace when we will celebrate the reign of Messiah in our new dwelling home. So it's about getting out of our home and getting out of our old way of life to go to a new place to be together as one accord. And it's also to make us remember that this place is temporary. We've come out of Egypt. We've been pulled out with an outstretched arm. There's loads of amazing, valuable lessons in the Moedim. But it is a time of unity and of brotherhood, a time of feasting and collectiveness and happiness in our new home, not made with man's hands. And the commandment is to take trees of leafy trees and the first fruits and the willows of the brook. And if you're in Israel during this time, they will build their sukkahs out of all different palm branches, and it's an amazing sight to see. But this is also symbolic of Yeshua, with the lulav, which we will do during the time of Sukkot and show all the connections to him there. But it's also showing that he is going to create these homes. It's a place not made with man's hands. That's why they decorate them with the fruits of creation and with the palm branches, because the home we're going to is not going to be made with our hands. It's going to be made by him. He goes to prepare a place for us. So Sukkot is that very picture of the final event of the end of the age. After all the trials and the tribulations, we will be at peace under the reign of Messiah, our King. The commandment is to do no work during the Sabbaths of Sukkot, and that's likened to the down payment of the future eternal rest that will come in the messianic reign. And I always say this, if men can't bring themselves to stop work and make time for God now, why would they want to stop work and make time for God in the future? These things are a shadow of what's to come, and therefore will inevitably happen in the messianic reign anyway. The Sabbaths are teaching us in advance, giving us a taster of what is to come, establishing itself now to bring forth fruit and blessing. To reject such things is to not truly grasp their beauty behind such an event of God's calendar, and the lessons and the blessings they pour out on believers when we do them, because we don't do these things for our salvation. We don't. We do these things because of our salvation, and the lessons and the blessings are overwhelming, they're abundant. So to reject that is to not quite grasp the beauty behind the Moedim. Just think, we will be taken from the temporary homes that we now dwell in. We will be given new homes in our Father's land. The branches of the fruit that the broods were decorated in represented not only our Messiah, but the tree of life, where the healing of the nations will take forth. Decorating our homes with the branches and the fruit also symbolised that the new homes we go to will be made by God himself, crafted by his hand in paradise. We are stripped away from the material of Egypt and given a new life and a new land and a new home. And that's what Sukkot is all about. So let's have a little look in verse 13. We've only got a few more things to speak of, and then we will tie this all together. So it's Deuteronomy 31 and it's verse 13. So the purpose of hearing the Torah aloud, because in verse 13 we read that the instruction was for the people to gather during the time of Sukkot on the 7th year of release. I mean, how much more prophetic do you want to get about Yehoshua? He comes back to free the captives. He comes in the year of release when debts would be freed. During the time of Sukkot will be the celebration, and at that time the Torah must be read by the leader. Let's get into it. It says in verse 13, it lists all the people previous and the children, and it's the reason the Torah is read is for them to have known it, for them to hear and to fear as long as they live in the land that Yahweh is giving them. That is the reason why the Torah was to be read in verse 13. We are called to hear the words of the Torah so that we fear, and not a fear that destroys us. This is holy infatuation. We have to not see God as an arbitrary mafia boss that wants to take people out. He's teaching us lessons in his Torah of infatuation and honour and respect, in a way that if we turn away from him, the natural cause and effect is going to be plagues and punishments. The natural cause and effect of turning away from him is going to be death. And that's what he's teaching. So we fear him and cling to him, and nothing else matters then, truly. We need to hear and learn and fear and even teach it to our children, because that's what it says in verse 13. Let's go to verse 15 now and check this out. It says, and Yahweh appeared at the tent in a column of a cloud, and the column of a cloud stood above the door of the tent. Sorry, stood above, yeah. It's quite fascinating, this. We spoke about it last year. We questioned, I said, why did God not appear in the circle of a cloud or in a rectangle? I mean, what is it with this column of a cloud? What is it? Why not in the shape of a menorah? I mean, why did he manifest in the column of a cloud? And it's actually quite simple. He manifests in a column because a column is a humanoid figure. And we believe that Yeshua is Yehovah, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh, and the Word dwelt among us. And it's my belief that the column of the cloud represents the humanoid figure of Yah. And it also says in verse 15, let's check everyone's translation, the column of the cloud stood above the door in the tent of meeting. Verse 15, it stood. It didn't hover. It didn't float. It didn't linger. It stood. It stood upright like a humanoid. This is Yeshua HaMashiach. And he's clouded because the presence of God breaks out amongst people. He's a consuming fire. He clouds himself in a veil of mercy. He's doing this out of mercy. This is our God. He's so powerful. He's like the sun. If you're in the desert and the sun's hitting your skin and there's no clouds, you're going to get tan, burnt, radiated, dehydrated. It's going to be a piercing sun. And the Lord is like a sun. The closer you get to the sun, the hotter it is, the more destruction is going to come upon you. But when you're in England, outside now, the cloud cover is there and it protects you from these things. And it's a simple thing. He's done it to protect us. You've got something to add on that, haven't you?
No, just, heaven and earth flee at the sight of his face.
Yes.
So we've got no chance. That's why he comes shrouded in cloud and in darkness for our protection.
Yes. It's for our protection. So the column of the cloud stood. Has anyone got anything else in verse 15? Or does everyone have the column stood?
Literally every version that I've got on the comparison bit on this just all says stood.
Yeah.
Except Young's Literal Translation, which says standeth, which is present tense, so it's like it's happening there.
Yes, it's like it's human. Yeah.
Tabernacle.
Stood of the door of the tabernacle. It's powerful. It's beautiful. And it's quite simple. Yehovah is Yeshua. He is outside of space-time. And he manifested as a humanoid figure in his glory. Remember when John sees him in Revelation, his feet are like brazen brass, and his voice is of waters, and his eyes are flames of fire. I mean, he's in his glory. You see that, and you're just a flesh vessel. It's over. I mean, this is the power of the King. So he wraps himself in clouds as a veil of mercy. Wow, it's powerful, it's beautiful, it's romantic. And it stood. The cloud stood, didn't hover, didn't float, didn't linger. It stood. It's a humanoid figure. I think that all indicates to me. Go ahead,
it references, my Bible references to Exodus 33. And it came to pass when Moses entered the tabernacle that the pillar of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses.
Yes.
All the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose and worshipped, each man in his tent door. And then it says, so the Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend.
Wow, beautiful. Panim anta panim, face to face.
That's why we know it's Yeshua.
Yeah.
Because it's written, no man shall see God face to face and live.
Yes.
And Yeshua comes as a softened down version that we can
speak and relate,
interact with. That's why we know he gave us commandments on Mount Sinai to Moses.
Yes.
There's a lot about doors, isn't there? Ancients of doors. And if you knock at the door, if you're knocking, Yeshua will open it.
Yes, it's the door.
He's at the door to open it to let us in, isn't he?
The door key.
Praise Yah. Mark, if you can read Deuteronomy 31, verse 28, 29 and 30, please. This is the last thing.
28, 29 and 30.
Yeah, this is the last point that we've got for this Torah portion. And I've never seen this. I'm going to share it with you. It's quite amazing. Go ahead, Mark, when you're ready.
Assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in their hearing and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly, and turn aside from the way which I had commanded you. And evil shall come to you in the latter days, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yehovah, to provoke him through the works of the hands. So Moshe spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Yisrael the words of this song till their completion.
Okay, so this is a stern rebuke by Moses, and he's saying, I'm calling the heaven and earth to witness against you. And he calls the elders and the tribes, and he says what's going to happen. He says in verse 29, for I know that after my death, then you will deal corruptly, and you then will turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and then evil shall come to you in the latter days. Moses says that after his death these things will occur. Now, if Moses is a picture of the Torah, and Moses proclaims that after his death, then shall the people turn aside from the way and do evil in the sight of God. In that regard, we can take Moses, the Torah, and see how for 2,000 years the Torah has been what? Dead. Nailed to the cross. Dead. Moses is dead. It's nailed to the cross. It's dead. And for 2,000 years, the Kahilah, the Ecclesias, the church, the nation of Israel have fallen. After that, in the latter days, as Moses says himself, because they've proclaimed it to be dead. Moses is dead at the moment to the current world. Moses is dead. And this is why these things have occurred and come upon us. This is why people are doing things that offend the Lord. And this is why we see so many abominations taking place right before our eyes. Because after the death of Moses, after the death of the Torah, then these things will occur. And the whole world says that the Torah is nailed to the cross, dead. The Torah has been buried and branded the Old Testament. The previous words now done away with. The death of the Torah has made us forget our identity. The death of the Torah has made so much confusion to what sin actually is. Because now people don't even know what sin is. So they're getting up to all sorts of madness because of the death of the Torah. But there is hope. Verse 30 states, so Moses spoke in the hearing of all the assembly, the Kahilah, the church of Israel, the words of this song in their completion. And we don't get the Song of Moses until next week. Cliffhanger. However, there is words of redemption, because we're never left forsaken. We're never left forsaken. We're not left forsaken. It says, he will not fail you nor forsake you. So Moses is about to teach them a song to remember their identity, to remember the history, and ultimately to remember the ways of God. Let's go to Revelations 15. And we're going to go from verse 1 through to 3, please, Jonathan. But if we can focus on verse 3.
Verse 1 to 3.
Yes, please, bro.
Then I saw another great and wonderful sign in heaven. 7 angels who have 7 plagues. The last ones, for with them God's wrath is finished. And I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who had overcome the beast and his image, and the number of his name, standing by the sea of glass, holding the harps of God. And they are singing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and wonderful are your deeds, Adonai Elohei Savayot. Just and true are your ways, O King of the nations.
Hallelujah. So the death of Moses takes place, and in the latter days, all the evil and the abominations come upon them. But Moses, in his words of redemption, teach them a song to sing. And in the end times, the latter day saints are singing the very song of Moses. Those that have come out the tribulation, singing this very tune of redemption that Moses is going to teach to the children next week, so that they don't forget their identity, they remember their God, and they are not forsaken, and that he will establish their covenant and come to redeem them. Isn't it a beautiful picture? So in the end times, the assembly as one accord sing the song of Moses in the book of Revelation. We are the saints in them days that are now recalling the Torah tune. We are rekindling the once forgotten song. The Torah is not dead. The Word is alive. The Word made flesh is alive. Yeshua is alive. It's so real. Let us sing the song of Moses to the nations. Let us practice this song over and over every Shabbat when we congregate. Not literally, but let us remember the identity of what is to come. Let us remember the meaning of why the song was to be sung. So you did not forget. So you did remember. So that it does not remain dead to you. That it remains alive inside of you. Let us be in rhythm to this song with how we walk out this life. in the Moedim and in the calendar and in the commandments. Let us sing this tune to all. Let us sing it as a way of spreading the truth of the Torah. And most of all, let us sing it with our hearts every day. Therefore, keeping it alive and keeping it well. So it may go well with you when you enter into the land. So with that, we will wrap up the Parasha. And remember what we've learned today. Please, if we're going to take anything, we take the fact that our Father goes ahead of us, that He is present with us, and that He is our rear guard. He is past, present and future. Yeshua said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the Aleph and the Tav. I am the first and the last. We can't get our little mush water brain wrapped around the infiniteness of our God. But what we can do is be solid in our faith and trust the Lord with all, not our own understanding, and lean not on the ways of the nations.
Amen.
And with that, we will wrap it up. Praise God. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.